we go. Uh, so yeah, we're going to be looking at this is kind of how to manage your royalties. Um, so this is one of um, uh, numerous. Sorry, you should be seeing this slide. This is okay. So this is one of three sessions. Next week, we're going to be looking at live opportunities. On the 21st, we're going to be looking at funding. Um, just to let you know about me, my name is Ed Heaton. I have a portfolio, what we call a portfolio career in music, so I do lots of different things. Um, that's my details. Should you want to follow me, so I am a music producer, a mix engineer, here in the studio. So I do a lot of work here. I'm an artist and songwriter, so I release stuff under different names, and I also co-write with different people as well. I'm a sound designer and composer, mainly for theatre, although I do bits of TV work as well. Um, uh, so I do a lot of work in theatre, spend a lot of time in rehearsal rooms. I do post-production sound editing, particularly on podcasts. I produce two podcasts at the moment for two different netball organisations in classic portfolio career ways. I'm a director of Four North Publishing, so we look after the royalties of about 500 different songs, and we're based here in the North, hence the name, and there's four of us. Uh, um, and we've been going for about 4 years now, 3, 4 years. We have stuff on like Love Island, Traitors, that kind of stuff. And we sort of so we look after the rights, and that includes some of my own work as well. I'm also a senior lecturer at Leeds Beckett. I teach there about once a week, and so like one day a week, and I teach music industry. So it's kind of something that I know and love, really interested in. I both have kind of a practical and academic knowledge of kind of how this all works. I'm going to say something obvious now, which is I love music. Many years ago, I did my first ever talk, and there was someone in the audience, and basically I was told that they thought it was a bit corporate, which really upset me and offended me because I, um, I really I've risked everything for music. Basically, my entire life is music. That's what I do. I spend, it's my hobby and my job, and I'm really grateful for that. But I've learned how the music industry works and how to kind of monetize and my skills so I can continue to work in music rather than it just be uh, a kind of hobby. So if it ever sounds like this is all just business, know that when I'm talking about it, this comes from a place of essentially not wanting to get a proper job. There is no magic wand. So all of this is advice and it's kind of best practice, but at the same time, there's no like if there was a kind of like do these things and you will be guaranteed success, everyone would be doing it. And there are many factors involved within a career. But what we're trying to do is kind of impart wisdom so that for hopefully you will have the tools to maximize the skills you have and hopefully earn some money from your creativity. So next up is what I call the rule of two. The rule of two is the two main, there's basically two main copyrights that govern the music industry. They are music composition. We also refer to it as the publishing as well. This is the song itself. Just so there are a song can exist without a recording. So you can play a song on a guitar, and that is a song. With When you write a song by yourself or with someone else, once you put that into a tangible format, it becomes your automatic intellectual property right. Tangible format means essentially either writing it down and taking a photo of it, or recording it into your phone, like on voice note, or recording it to a DAW. Digitizing is best because it auto date stamps it. But once you've done that, once you can basically say, look, it exists in a form outside our heads, then it is the intellectual property is automatically given to the people who wrote it. Those rights can then be assigned to a publisher who can then go and exploit your work, exploit in the old sense of the word, which means to make the most of, not the new sense of the word, which is to take advantage of. So when we talk about exploiting, we mean to make the most of. Obviously, nowadays it tends to have pretty negative connotations. The master, so is the second part of the rule of two. So this is the recording, and the recording, it basically, the recording is owned by the person or the company who paid for it or arranged and paid for it. So, for example, if you record a song in your flat, uh, that belongs to you because it's your flat, you own it, it's your equipment, therefore, the intellectual property of the recording is owned by you. Even if you do a cover version, that recording of that song, just the sound recording, not the composition itself, is owned by you, which is great. So it means you have the rights on that. However, and also if you hire a recording studio and pay for it, the master rights are owned by you. However, if a company pays for you to go into the studio or gives you an advance, or in fact, sometimes if maybe you record it in a venue for free, or someone allows you to come around to their house and record, there is a question about who owns that recording, and that's a pretty grey area. But ultimately, if someone pays for that recording, so a record company pays for that recording, that is owned by the record company because essentially they've paid for it, and therefore they have intellectual property for claims on it. That's just the recording. So that's the rule of two. And by collecting on these royalties, by collecting royalties on these copyrights is how artists, songwriters, and the music industry as a whole makes money. These are the two, essentially, if you understand the rule of two, the composition and the master, everything else is basically circling around that. These are the two main copyrights that the entire music industry hang around. So moving on, it's so just to kind of break this down, uh, and to kind of make a kind of practical understanding of this. So the composition, um, which so the song itself. So in 1973, Dolly Parton wrote "I Will Always Love You" as the songwriter. She owns the intellectual copyright of the composition, and then she then gave it to a company to exploit and look after and make sure she got paid from it. And that is Sony Music Publishing right now. But she owns the intellectual property. She is the songwriter and the sole songwriter of that song. Now, there are loads of recordings of "I Will Always Love You," and whoever recorded paid for these recordings owns the master, the recording, or the sound recording of that composition. So how it works is "I Will Always Love You" is streamed. And the version we're going to play is the Whitney Houston version because it's the most famous, arguably. So you stream, and a royalty is paid via the DSPs, the digital service providers, to the master rights owner. In this case, that is Arista Sony Music Entertainment. That's the record label who own the sound recording. Uh, um, oh, Come on. Oh, there we go. No matter which version, however, it doesn't matter which version we play, the mass of the master, a royalty is always paid for the composition, for the publishing to the composer, in this case Dolly Parton. So whichever version is played, be it be her version or John Adams's version, I'm just looking at the list now, or Whitney Houston's version, a royalty is paid to Dolly Parton as the writer. There are lots of ways compositions and masters can earn royalties, and lots of mechanisms that make this work. And this is some of the stuff we're going to look at today. So the basics of music royalties. Music creators and rights holders make money and generate royalties in multiple ways, depending on how and where the music is played and performed. So essentially, depending on the context in which the music is either played, performed, streamed, in whatever way the music is consumed, there may be a royalty attached. A music creator is always the first owner of the musical works, as I've mentioned, but in most cases will license it to different groups in order to most effectively collect royalties attached to it. So essentially is that if you make a recording, you write a song and make a recording of it, you own the master and the composition. But a lot of the times, people will then, give it to a record label for the sound recording, sign it out to a publishing for the composition, to try and make the most of that both those intellectual copyrights, and try and earn some money from them, because they may be better placed than to make the best of that work. So it starts with a song. When a song is written, the writers of the song automatically own the intellectual copyright, the IP in this case, and this can cause issues. Um, they must put it in a tangible format, which I mentioned as proof. So when you write a song, you have to put it in a tangible format. You can't just say, "Oh, it's in my head," because anything could be head. You can't prove what's in someone's head. That's why you put it in a tangible format. Copyright of musical work can only exist when written down or recorded in a tangible form. It cannot exist merely as an idea alone. So just that's the Musicians Union's definition of what a tangible format is and why we have to do it. And therefore, that creates evidence that the song has been written by the people who say who've written it. No matter who records the song, the songwriter owns the composition, as we've mentioned. As a writer, a writer can register themselves on a song with PRS and MCPS. Don't worry, we're going to look at what they are in a minute. These collection organizations, these collection organizations known as PROs, performance rights organizations, as we call them, make sure you get paid when a song is performed. Again, more on this in a little bit. If the writer has a song or a body of work that is deemed to have appeal, like it's commercial, or it's syncable, or it fits with, fits with a movement that's happening or a trend that's happening, they may be offered some sort of publishing deal. Again, I'm a little bit on this later. So I'm just sort of just laying down the basics of this. So the recordings. When you make a recording, this is also a piece of intellectual property. The people who convened or basically paid for the arrangement are the original owners. This is referred to as the masters, as I've already mentioned. If you've used a service for free, it's worth clarifying ownership of the master. So if you've recorded at someone else's flat, for example, or someone else's house, or someone else's studio, and they've given you that service for free, it might be just worth checking, like where did the who owns that master recording, because they could claim that because it's their equipment, they pay for it. So it's definitely worth looking at that and making sure that that's clear, because actually a lot of issues arise when there's lack of clarity about who owns what copyright. It is assumed the performers are contracted contracted more on this later. So essentially, it's assumed that when you get other people to play, that there has been some kind of formal agreement about how they are being paid, or if they can claim PPL on their performance. Again, we'll look at this later, what that means. There are other processes in place to reimburse the songwriters of the composition recorded. Again, we're going to look at this a bit later. So I'm just kind of laying down the kind of basic principles, and then we're going to go into this later. So lots of processes about how songwriters get paid from recording. A simple agreement can be made to clarify both the composition and master ownership. We call this a writer split, but you can also put master ownership on it as well. I highly recommend doing this. There can be confusion sometimes. It happened to me fairly recently, and there was no malice involved at all. It was just a kind of a misunderstanding about who did what, and all because we just didn't, like, which we should have done, is we didn't sign a songwriters agreement. We have now, and that's now in place, which is great, but we probably should have done that at the beginning so it didn't cause any confusion. So it is really worth doing, because things, when things come out in the world, or there's a not understanding, and again those gray areas of where a lot of problems lie, and by a very simple document agreeing who owns what of each of the copyrights can save you a lot of hassle down the line. So again, kind of continue looking at the basics of music royalties. So commercially released and broadcast music has multiple rights. So These rights are controlled by people or organizations, aka stakeholders. So we talk about stakeholders a lot, and they're basically people who have a vested interest in either a piece of copyright, or an artist in general, or so they may be record labels or music publishers or managers. They are called stakeholders. Also, you would argue that the audience are stakeholders as well, because they have an interest in what an artist is doing. So, but we tend to refer to stakeholders as people who have a kind of vested interest in the kind of the well-being and the success of an artist. So these are master rights holders, traditionally the record label, uh, performers, so the people who actually perform the song, the songwriters and publishers, so the people who wrote the song, and then the people who might represent them once they've written it. You might be all three of the above these, and but each one is registered and collected differently, which is very confusing. So essentially, you go, well, I'm the writer, I'm the performer, I'm the master rights holder, I'm all of these things, which is brilliant, and that means you own all of those. You have a right on all those copyrights, but you have to register them in different places so you can claim the necessary royalties. This is where people get wildly confused, and it's completely understandable because it is confusing. So there are three main ways income is generated. Through music. So that is through sales, through the broadcast of music, and through the duplication of music. And we're going to look into what that means, because duplication in particular doesn't really mean what it used to, which was duplicating it onto physical formats. Obviously that still exists, but duplication has different connotations now in the streaming era. So when music is released commercially, these are the ways stakeholders get paid. Okay, so and again, if you're all you are the main stakeholders. That's brilliant. So recording royalties via a distributor or label, uh, performance royalties, so what we call neighboring rights via PPL as a performer. Performing the performer rights, the neighboring rights as a rights holder, so which is two different things, so both as a performer and a rights holder. And then performing royalties via PRS, Performing Rights Society. Then the mechanical royalties via MCPS, the Mechanical Copyright Protection Society. I know. Acronyms are huge in the music industry. Everyone loves them. And we use them a lot. And that's why everything gets so confusing, because you have PRS, PPL, MCPS, PRS. And then, you go to other countries and you have ASCAP and CSAC. And, so it can get very, very confusing. So let's just break down what this actually means from a kind of working point of view. This is a nice little diagram that Whiskas put together a few years ago, and I still really like it. So, if a song is in sale in Jumbo or HMV or in Crash Records, and it's a royalty is paid via the distributor and record label, yeah. And then they pay the artist, or if you've done it directly, they pay it directly to you. If you've done like a sale or return, so you physically take them in and sold them and sent them, given them to the shop, they will then, if they sell some, they will then give you a royalty. However, there's also a mechanical royalty. So record labels should pay MCPS a license at the production stage. This goes to the songwriter and publisher. So basically, record labels have to pay a license to be able to recreate a songwriter's work in a physical format. So that's how it works. So that's why that is what we call mechanical royalties, and that is taken care of by MCPS. Then you have streaming, which is probably the kind of, well, it absolutely is the kind of the biggest way that music is consumed. So 60% of all global revenue, 70% of all global revenue is created by streaming. So is basically the most popular form of consuming music. So a stream takes place. So approximately 82% of distributed income goes to the recording royalty, and that is paid to the artist via either their record label or their distributor. So if you put music out through TuneCore or CD Baby or Kicker, that they will then pay you your royalties from after a certain amount is commissioned. Independent artists may receive all this figure. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Then the same song is streamed, so 82% goes obviously to, as we said, to the master rights holder, the record label or the distributor, and then to you if you're the master rights holder. Then there's the publishing royalties, which is paid directly to the songwriter, and that's paid via MCPS and PRS. So when you release a cover version on Spotify, they essentially take care of the license for you. They will pay the royalty that is generated for the song directly to the songwriter. Or if you are the songwriter and your work is registered with PRS and MCPS, you will receive that royalty as well, as long as you're signed up to the two organizations. And then approximately 18% uh, um, goes to the songwriter, which is then split in half, and half goes because a stream is considered a performance of the song, so 50%, and then it's also considered a reproduction of the song. So you're digitally reproducing it, which so therefore a mechanical right is also paid. So and then so there's paid as two separate royalties, but the two MCPS and PRS, but they are then paid to the songwriter. I know it's crazy and confusing, and you probably sat there going, "Oh, what?" But essentially, it's just see it's two separate royalties. There's the master royalty, which goes via distributor, and then there's the songwriting royalty, which goes via the PROs. And if you've written a song and you also the master rights holder, you get all of that money. That both those royalties will come to you. If you're signed to a record label, then some of it will go to the record label. If you're signed to a publisher, some of it will go to the publisher. Um, and so it kind of works out differently depending on your situation.
Can I just jump in for a second there?
Yeah, of course you can.
So can you just go back to the last slide for me?
Mhm.
So is it that the publishing royalties are for the performance and the duplication, but the
Yeah,
performance goes through PRS and the duplication through MCPS?
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm with you. I just wanted to
That's
check that
brilliant.
I got
I
that
know
right.
yeah, well done. You've actually managed to understand that. So good work.
Fine.
Please do jump in if you've got any more of those questions. They're really useful for me to clarify.
I will do.
So radio airplay. Okay, so there's two sets of royalties that are paid. Um, so again, PRS is paid because it goes to the songwriter. So when a song is played live on air, it's considered a performance. So that performance royalty is paid to the songwriter for that performance. Um, uh, then another royalty is paid to PPL, so the Phonographic Performance Limited, and then which is then again split in half, and half of that goes to the performer. So the person who sang on the record, and that can be performers. So that could be the singer, the guitarist, the drummer, even the producer. Um, and then 50% goes to the master rights holders, whoever kind of owns that recording. So whether that might be the band itself or the singer songwriter itself, or it might be a record label. So it depends. So half of that, and that's basically a performance fee of the recording. It's basically saying you're playing our music to a wide range of people in a public space or a public arena. So that might be so on radio or television. Therefore, we are paying you the right for doing that, and it's considered like it's like a performance fee, but for the master rights holders and the people who performed on the record. And then PRS goes to the singer, goes to the songwriters and publishers. Now, as you can see, MCPS is has a little asterisk there. That's because when it's live, it's considered a performance, but it's not considered a reproduction. However, if it's on what we call a non-synchronous form of broadcast, i.e., it's played through BBC Sounds, or it's on iPlayer, or basically a non-live form of television, that is considered a reproduction, and therefore MCPS will be paid. So you can see already, we're a few slides in, you can already see the kind of like the variety of ways that royalties can be generated, but also kind of the kind of variety of administration that needs to be taken care of when you're wanting to take care of your royalties. It's not as simple as just write a song, check it out on Spotify, thank you very much, and I just get paid, whatever I get paid through Spotify. It's like, no, there's also other rights attached, and then if they gets broadcast, then there's other rights, there's other means of getting, which is great, because actually these are all forms of income, but they also need managing, and to manage them well is to understand them. So remember, even if you own your own recording and are a solo performer and write your own songs, you need to be aware of all these processes to receive the income due to you, as I've just said. If you're representing an artist as a manager, or recordings or compositions, as a label or publisher, you need to be aware of all these sources that generate income. So it's really, so for myself, who's works as a publisher, who represents lots of royalties, it's really important that I stay on top of understanding where money can be generated and is coming from, and how making sure that we are receiving and collecting on all the money that is due to artists, because there's a lot of money floating around, and there is a lot of money that isn't claimed by artists, even though they're due to it, because they aren't signed up to the right organizations, and they aren't getting their claims in, and they're missing out on income. So recorded music distribution. If you are the original recording owner, you have the right to distribute your work. So if you own the master, you have the right to distribute it. Um, if you are licensing the work, you may need to consider the following, no matter how informal the arrangement is. So if you are licensing, if you've owned the recording, but you're passing the rights over to someone else to look after, you need to make sure that you need to be aware, consider the following, to make sure you understand what's going on. All right. So who is the master rights holder? So who actually owns the master? That's really important. Is it a time-bound license? How long is the agreement for? How long is the agreement for managing the recording retention? So, uh, how long, basically, how long are they keeping hold of those rights for? Is it in perpetuity, which is forever? Is it 5 years? Is it 3 years? After a certain amount of time, can they still collect? So is there, like, when the contract comes to end, they still have another 6 months to collect on any royalties that they may have instigated? How long is the agreement for releasing through them? So what are the options? So uh, different types of record deals, or different types of licensing agreement have different options. So, and again, this is all about how long and how many of the tracks, and making sure that you basically understand what you're getting into as an agreement. What is the percentage of the royalty of income? What are you receiving for them releasing your record? So essentially, how long, when does it start, when does it finish, how long can they retain the rights for it after the kind of agreement is finished, what percentage are you getting of the recording? That's the kind of big questions. And there are, there might be some people who go, well, typically if you're licensing, it should be about 50%, but it depends on the kind of deal that you're doing. To release music independently, either as an artist or indie label, to streaming platforms, what we call DSPs, so digital service providers. We tend to refer them in the music industry as DSPs, just because there's loads of streaming services. There's Amazon, Netflix, then there's also on top of that the music ones, and so we call them DSPs. So we know we're talking about music streaming services. So to get your music on DSPs, you will have to work with a distributor. So someone who who will distribute your music to the to the DSPs. These include DistroKid, TuneCore, Ditto, Kicker, AWOL, and many, many more. And they all have different ways uh, of um, receiving recompense for their service. By using them, you are giving them the license to distribute recordings and pay you on the income you make. So what you're saying essentially is like you have the sole right to do that. You're granting them exclusive license. That means if you put a record out with Kicker, you then can't go and release the same record with AWOL. Like you are giving them souls. You are granting them that license. Um, uh, and this may appear that they own the recordings on social media, YouTube, and other streaming platforms. This is because essentially you are granting them that license, and unless you make it very clear about kind of how it's worded, it might appear that it looks like they own the recording. For smaller artists and labels, this tends to be on a per release basis. So you'll tend to uh, do a single deal. So every time you release a new record, you will go through your a distributor, but you may also, it depends on whether or not you have a yearly subscription to TuneCore, for example. So you may want to release them through a year because you're paying for that subscription. Then there's also direct to fan, so releasing music. So rights holders can sell their music direct to fan, e.g., Bandcamp or Music Glue. So basically, you're not going through third party. You are selling directly to the fan. Bandcamp tends to be the most popular. It's the one that kind of most people use. And they take a percentage of what you sell. So you can set the prices and earn the revenue direct, which is great. So you can do pay what you feel, or you can set it's going to cost this amount of money for the product. It's very useful for acquiring data on customers, so you can find out kind of which are basically allow you, if they hand over their email and tick a box, that you can put them on a mailing list, and therefore you have direct access to them to tell them when you're releasing music. And actually, mailing lists are still incredibly useful tool because you are giving people consent to send you stuff. So when you do receive a mail out from labels and artists, because you've consented to that, people are pretty happy about it, and a lot of the time will open it. You're not obliged to pay any additional fees for this, but if you have duplicated physical recordings, it's assumed that you have the relevant mechanical licenses. So essentially, when you use direct fans, it's assumed that you have paid. So if you've done a cover version, for example, you've paid the licenses on the duplication to the relevant songwriters and publishers. So record labels. Um, you may wish to release your music through a record label, and it's hard because a lot of labels record labels get quite a bad name, and that's because they haven't always acted always in the best interest of the artist. Particularly major labels, because they're such massive companies, and obviously they take up a lot of bandwidth for creatives. By releasing through a label, you are granting them the right to duplicate, distribute, sell, and license the recordings. So essentially, you are saying that they have control over the master rights, so the master recordings, and they can do essentially what they like with them within reason. Um, but you are granting them that. Now there may be obviously some negotiation with that, and you might be like, well, we don't own our music there or there, and depending on the kind of leverage you have, that can be adhered to. But you are allowing them to essentially kind of take your music and then have it remixed. They may have Dramatico versions done of it, because they feel it's going to be a way to kind of to generate more income on the recording. So who owns the recording So who owns the recording, for how long, and how much an artist gets paid depends on the type of record deal that's signed. So there's loads of different types of record deals. And they can they can vary depending on the type of labels you're signing to, the type of artist you are, um, uh, the amount of catalog you have, the leverage you have, that kind of thing. So how long you assigned to a record label depends on the term and or the option. So the term could be like, so a term is, so if you're licensing your record to, you've got the recording, you own the master of it, but you're licensing to them, that will be for a term, so maybe 5 years, and then all rights will revert back to you. Or it might be an option period with a major who basically have the right to pick up on options of next albums. So they may sign you for a 6 album deal, but they only pick up the option for 2 albums because the second album bombs, and so they're not going to sign you for any. So they drop you after the second album. So this is what, but they have the option to keep to recontract you for up to 6 albums, and you can't go anywhere else until they say otherwise, until you either fulfill the 6 album option or they drop you. So it's just worth knowing these kind of different phases, and it's definitely worth going to look into this stuff, and kind of how this stuff operates. There are 3 major labels: Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner's Music Group, and they are what we call the big three. And they have under them loads and loads of subsidiaries, and they have about 70% of the overall global market. So they are massive players. Universal is the biggest, followed by Sony, and then Warner's. But they as a kind of a body of 3 labels, take up the majority of market share. However, independent labels are incredibly important to the life of music, and majors know this as well, because this is a lot of time where artists are developed, they find their voice, they find their audience. This is where new genres and new movements happen, and majors are always looking to the independents to see what's happening next. They are aware that they are big companies, and therefore, because they're big, they don't maneuver particularly quickly, and there are a lot of stuff is happening in the underground, and kind of on a local or national level that hasn't been picked up on a global level yet. So majors are always looking to the indies to kind of give them cues about what's going to happen next. So here are some local independent labels. There's Clue Records. There's Saint and the City Records, who I assigned to, and I do some A&Ring for. Blink Come Play With Me Records as well, who kind of have released a lot of stuff over the years and do single plays. There's also Monomyth, who look after loads of really great local artists as well. So these are all, and all 3 of the, all 4 of these labels kind of essentially local labels to Yorkshire. There's also Launchpad Plus as well, who work a lot of time in conjunction with the EMI North. So what you're seeing there with EMI North is an independent working in conjunction with the major, which is fantastic. And we're seeing more and more of that as well. Less kind of like major indie. We're seeing, a lot of interplay between the two, because it's mutually beneficial to do that. So let's move on to music publishing royalties. Everyone with me so far? I hope this is okay and making lots of sense. I know I'm rattling through it, but yeah, I hope it's useful. So I'm just gonna have a little quick drink before we move on. Excellent. So publishing royalties. Publishing refers to the rights related to the song or composition and the songwriters. So when we talk about publishing, we can either be talking about a single song or an entire catalog of music that has been made by a songwriter or a songwriting team. There are 2 main royalties for collecting publishing, as we've mentioned. So there's performing royalties and there's mechanical royalties. So they're your 2 main, and as we've mentioned about how that works earlier. In the UK, these are collected by PRS and MCPS, the Performing Rights Society and Mechanical Copyright Protection Society. Performing royalties are collected by PRS in the UK, and this is generated when a song or composition are broadcast, and that means uh, either they're performed live in public. So when a song is performed live in public, if you're performing in a licensed venue, then there is a royalty generated. If it's played on TV and radio, that is considered a performance, and there is a royalty generated. If it's streamed through any DSP, so Spotify, Amazon, Deezer, then that there is a performance royalty generated. Live, so when you performance royalties is obviously, as I mentioned, with live. When you perform live, a small gig pays around £10 to PRS to all the songwriters combined. So a little gig, 150 cap. So it's not loads, and that has to split between all of the songwriters involved. And that might also mean if you've done a cover version, a bit that flies off to whoever you've done a cover of. If it's Oasis, then that goes to Noel Gallagher. Which is why it's always really good to perform your own work, because you get a cut of the money. So large gigs pay 4.2% of ticketed income, which is split 80% to the headliner. So if the headliner writes their own work, then it's 80% to them, and then 20% to the sport acts. So even if the headliner doesn't write their own work, 80% of that money will go to whoever wrote the songs for the headliner, if that makes sense. You need to submit your set list through the PRS website. So when you perform live, you have to submit your set list. Now you can do this quite easily. You can set up set lists, so if you're doing certain songs, you actually just go, "I'll perform that set list," and you can pop them in. There's apps now to do that as well. So everything's becoming a lot easier to kind of, and much more sort of integrated. PRS are finally catching up with the world online. It's taken them a while, but they're getting there. Um, uh, Publishing royalties when you're played on radio, here's some costs. So this is just an average out. So as you can see with Radio 1, and it depends on the time of day. So when it's off peak, and then low peak and then high peak, it can vary quite wildly, as you can see. So at high peak, you're looking at about £10.56. So I've averaged amounts are around about £7 per minute. Radio 1 Extra is one is 322 apps at peak times. The biggest payer is Radio 2 because it's the biggest radio station at £28.22, and these are per minute. So if you have a 3-minute song, you're looking at about £60 for a radio play, which is great. So you can go look at those. They're all available on the PRS website as well. So those figures are as of early 2025. So DSPs also pay performing royalties when music is streamed, as mentioned earlier. So you get there will be a revenue for every time your song is streamed if you've written a song. An approximate and sorry, it should be 19. It should be 9% of the performance of the royalty is automatically paid out to PRS when a song is streamed. That's 9%, not 19%. So 9% is automatically paid to PRS when a song is streamed. This is then paid to the writers if they've signed to PRS or to their publishers. So to receive that royalty, you have to be registered with PRS, and this is why everyone always bangs on about being registered with PRS, because it is essentially, if you're not picking up on all your royalties. And if your song gets streamed, like 1 million times, for example, that's so you're getting £3,000 approximately in master, but you're missing out on another about another £180 from am I £180? Yeah, or £18. You're missing out on 18%. Essentially, you're missing out a percentage of the payments. What does that work out? It's 3,000. Yeah, no, 180 quid. So you get, you get 3 grand, which is great, and then you're missing out on another 180 quid in terms of royalties, or certainly for the performance side, which would be about 90 quid. But that it's all really important when you're starting to stream in numbers to make sure that you're registered with the right people. I managed to get myself very confused there. In the UK, performing royalties are automatically collected by PRS, as I mentioned. To collect royalties, your compositions need to be registered through PRS with confirmed writer splits. So essentially, you need to register with PRS, and you need to say what the split is. So you need to also register to the other writers. Now, those other writers don't have to be members of PRS, but you need to say if you've co-written a song, and you need to state what the split of that song is. So if it's a co-write, it's 50-50, great. Or if you've taken the lion's share, so it's 70-30, for example, you need to make that explicit on the PRS website. Your live performances must be registered through PRS with a set list, and the amount of people who don't do this is phenomenal. There are like lots of people do not pick up on their PRS income. Each individual songwriter needs to join PRS or appoint a publisher to collect for them. If you're going to collect royalties, so you have to do this if you're going to collect royalties. Now a publisher can register your songs for you, and you don't have to be what's called a society member, because essentially the publisher will do that on your behalf. However, you don't. If you don't sign up to it, and the publisher collects, there is actually a part of the royalty that the publisher can't collect, that goes directly to the writer. We call this the writer share, and you won't collect that, so you will be missing out on actually about half of your royalty if you are just signed through a publisher but not a society member. So it's really key that you sign, so you get all your royalties due to you. uh, While radio play is usually picked up automatically, it's still advisable to log any plays on PRS. So if you know your music songs are getting played on PRS, it's definitely worth logging any performances. We always try to log our performances just to make sure that, when we know things have been broadcast, to make sure that those royalties are definitely going to get picked up. Publishing royalties, so for mechanical royalties, so this is the other side of PRS. What's really confusing is that people say join PRS. Unfortunately, now PRS is an organization that has both Performing Rights Society and MCPS, Mechanical Copyright Protection Societies, under its umbrella. So it's actually quite confusing, because when you join PRS, you need to join both PRS and MCPS to pick up on both of the copyrights. But the whole organization is called PRS for Music. Very confusing branding. They used to be called the PRS MCPS Alliance, which was less snappy. So mechanical royalties are collected in the UK by MCPS. They are generated when a song or a composition is duplicated, so either CD or vinyl, or it's played through DSPs, so digital service providers, so Spotify, Amazon Music. So when it's played, you receive a mechanical mechanical royalty. Non-synchronous radio play, so I've mentioned this before, non-live playback is also classed as duplication, specifically through BBC Sounds app. So if you listen back to something and music is played, essentially that's called but it isn't live. That's non-synchronous, and therefore it is considered a duplication, and you receive a royalty through MCPS. DSPs are also paying mechanical royalties, so you receive, as mentioned, when your song is streamed, because it's considered a duplication. Approximately 9% mechanical royalty is automatically paid to MCPS when a song is streamed. Just like for the performance royalty, at exactly the same time, there is also a royalty generated for the mechanical royalty, and they both go to PRS and then MCPS, and is paid out to you quarterly. This is then paid to the writers if they are signed to MCPS, or to their publishers. So, I didn't animate this. Lots of indie labels will ask artists to waive their mechanical royalties or reimburse through other ways, e.g., stock. So essentially, rather than if a band have written their own work and an indie label is pressing it for them, because there is a payment uh, at pressing. So basically, you have to pay before it's pressed. They will. The label might ask you to waive that cost, so that they don't have to pay that upfront fee because it's all about cash flow. So what they might do is rather than you receiving that money through MCPS, they will give you a certain amount of stock, which you can then sell at live gigs or directly to fans. This can be easier for small amounts, where an artist aren't registered with MCPS as well, so that's also a thing. However, MCPS can often chase payments for labels for previous releases. So if something's gone out and an MCPS payment hasn't been paid, then this can be chased. For more information, you can look at collection here at this website. But basically, PRS for Music. Go to prsformusic.com and you look at all that information there, and you can look at all the most frequent FAQs, and like find out kind of what they do, which is there's a really wide range of services, and PRS and MCPS. And I know I was sort of saying about them catching up and stuff, but they are vital services for songwriters. They have protected songwriters and made sure that songwriters get paid, and they are diligent at their job, and they are doing a job where music is played all the time everywhere. They are collecting those royalties for us, which is a thankless task. So mechanical royalties don't happen when songs are broadcast live on radio, but BBC Sounds, as I've mentioned, playback, and also generate royalties that are attached to the moving image. So if your song is on a film or a television, that is what we call synchronization. So if you have a song that is placed on a piece of TV or a piece of film, that's called what we call a sync. And a mechanical royalty will be generated for that, as a performance royalty will be as well, and that will be paid at certain rates. So that can be, and again, that is usually non-synchronous. So when you watch something on iPlayer, so if you so when we were on Traitors and people watch repeats, that we get a small royalty for that, because as the publishers, but also the mechanical royalties, so the copyright holders, and so in this case LMA Records own the master rights, they get paid a certain amount through PPL. They get paid a certain amount through PPL, and then MCPS as well for mechanical rights to the songwriters, so through us as well. Phew, even I get confused, as you can see. Poor. So music publishers. So we're just mentioning music publishers, and obviously that's something I do. So with Foreign North, so similar to master rights and record labels, music publishers can sign copyright the composition to collect the income and then pay the royalties to the original songwriters. So we essentially represent the compositions of songwriters. Now that might be one song, it might be their entire catalog, but we're there to collect the royalties for the artist. So what is the basic job of a publisher? A publisher represents songwriters and their intellectual copyright in the form of the composition, so the music and the lyrics, if they have any. So it's basically, so it could be either a piece of instrumental music, or it could be a song with lyrics. And actually, someone duplicates the lyrics in form of print. That actually is also, there is also there is a royalty to be paid on that, because they are duplicating the lyrics, which are owned by the songwriter and represented by the publisher. A publisher will often represent many songwriters and their entire catalogs. So there are some people who assign their entire catalogs over to. So we represent a few artists who their entire catalog. So this guy called Mike Stockeld, he's brilliant American singer-songwriter, and we represent his entire catalog. We got like all 4 albums that he's released are on our publishing. So it's our job to protect copyright from plagiarism and illegal usage, find songwriting opportunities and collaborations this is depending on the type of deal. So if it's an admin deal or something which is quite basic, we aren't in a position. We effectively don't have to find like opportunities for songwriters. Although it's something we do try and do where possible. We try and find chances for artists to collaborate and work together. And we ran a songwriting account with Come Play With Me last year, which was brilliant. So we are trying to seek opportunities for ourselves. But yeah, essentially, if you are signed to more than an admin deal, your publisher should be finding you opportunities to songwrite and collaborate. They should register your songs with we refer to them as works when they're registered with the PROs, so Performing Rights Organisations, so PRS and MCPS. They should be the publisher should register with both organisations. They should register performances. So if the song's played on the radio or it's broadcast or it's or if an artist plays live, it's actually the publisher's job to register those. Obviously, the artist has to inform the publisher if they've played live and they've done some work. So it tends to be quite a two-way thing. They have to exploit the songs. So, as I mentioned before, in the old sense of the word, make the most of, either through getting cover versions done, finding synchronization opportunities. So, getting it played, underneath Love Island or any other things. Theatre interpolation. So, getting your music into theatres, theatre shows, so because when it's used in theatre, it also generates an income. Jukebox placements, in-store payments, in-flight aeroplane entertainment. We've done those things. Usage in chains like coffee shops, all that kind of thing. We also have to track the usage of the song. So now it's harder for smaller organizations, so they may work with a bigger publisher. So we work with Centric, for example, who help track our music when it's been used. Collect, account, and pay royalties. So it's our job to make sure that the artists are getting paid their due amount and making sure they get paid the correct amount as well. And that's not all. Sometimes things need chasing up. There's not always accurate accounting, so that'll need looking after administrating. So publishing agreements. Traditionally, you might sign a publishing agreement to collect your performing and mechanical royalties. So the basic job, as mentioned. Many established and artists and songwriters won't be signed to MCPS directly because they'll just let their publisher do that for them and collect all that money on their behalf. If signed to PRS, songwriters will always retain 50% of the income. So this is what I mentioned earlier, what's called the writer's share. But other collection services can collect 100% of royalties if you're not signed up. So you just basically, it's really important that you sign up to PRS, because if not, you won't be able to collect the writer's share. That won't be available. However, the publisher can collect 100% of the mechanicals to MCPS. Signed directly with MCPS costs a one-off £100. Exactly the same with PRS as well. As with the recording, is it it's important to understand. I don't understand why I've put a question mark there, but I have. How long the agreement for managing the compositions, so the retention. So like how long are they going to look after the works for? Do you still collect part of the royalties, e.g., the writer share of PRS? So are you making sure which part are you collecting? So which bit of it? So are they collecting 100% on the mechanicals, but nothing on the performance side? Are they collecting a bit on the publishing side and a bit on the mechanicals? So it's important to know which bits you're signing over. How do you submit your live music claims? So making sure that you understand how that's done. What is the process of that? What percentage of the income are you earning? This is incredibly important. So how much are you earning for your work? Again, that's always the most important bit. How much am I getting? What is my slice? Remember, publishing represents the recording. These are two separate copyrights. So look, going back to the rule of two. So it does not, this does not, they are not representing the recording. They're only representing the composition. Publishing does not cover the arrangements played on the record unless it has been written as part of the composition. So if a song has a melodic piece of arrangement in it and it's considered as part of the composition, that's great. But however, if it's not considered, if it's just like, well, the musician came up with that, but it's not part of the actual main composition, then that needs to be, that needs to be very clear with whoever wrote that piece of work, because they need to know that um, they're not getting credit for it. This has caused big issues in the past. One of the big ones is Every Breath You Take, which Sting has 100% of the copyright on it because he wrote the song. But Andy Sumners, who wrote the guitar line with the famous arpeggiated guitar line, he claims that, well, without that guitar line, there isn't a song. Sting argues there is a song, you can still play it, you can still sing it. Fair enough, the arpeggiator is a great bit of arrangement, but it isn't necessarily part of the songwriting. So again, there needs to be clarity on that kind of stuff. There has been lawsuits and there is an agreement between them now, I do believe. So neighboring rights. Phew. So next, this is another set of rights. So these are sometimes called auxiliary rights as well. And basically, in UK law, says that performers and recording rights holders, traditionally the record label, have the right to payment when their works are publicly performed. This is called equitable remuneration. So when a song is performed, uh, so it's played in. So say, for example, a piece of music is played in a stadium before a football match. Then the songwriters get paid for that. But there's an argument that also there should be a payment made to the people who own the recording, because they're using their recording. So without that recording, it wouldn't be able to be played, and also the people who are performing on that recording as well, because they performed it, they made that song. So when it's played in a public space, essentially a piece of recorded music is played in a public space, there should be a royalty paid. And again, we see this in different types of venues. You'll see that most cafes and shops will have a sticker that says that they're signed up to BPL and they're signing the correct royalties. So this usually means TV and radio. So when stuff is played on TV and radio, a royalty will be paid. This is administered by PPL, the Phonographic Performance Limited, another acronym. And we tend, these are sometimes called performer rights or neighboring rights. We tend to call them neighboring rights now, so they don't get confused with performance rights for the songwriter. So we call them neighboring rights, just so we're clear that when we're talking about neighboring rights, we're talking about the rights of the master rights holder and the performers on that record. I hope that's clear. So neighboring rights, PPL pay royalties registered on their system to performers and rights holders 50% each. So if you're a master, so basically when a song is performed in public, 50% goes to the master rights holders and 50% gets paid to the registered performers. Now the registered performers might be just the lead singer because they're the only one who joined PPL, or it might be an entire split between an entire band if they've all joined, but you have to join as an individual. Only rights holders can register the recording, so whoever owns the recording are the only people who have the right to actually register it with PPL. Recordings are identified by ISRC codes. Again, more acronyms. I can't remember what that means right now because it's past 8 o'clock. International Standard Recording Code, I think it is, but ISRC code. So these are identifiers of each separate recording has an ISRC code, and that might also mean a vocal version and then the instrumental of it, they are considered two separate recordings because one has a vocal and one doesn't, and they will each have a separate ISRC code, and these can be generated by PPL if you register on with the recording with PPL, or given to you by your distributor. So if you distribute through TuneCore, they will give you a PPL number, or if you've registered it before, you've put it out, you can give them your ISIC code that you've already created for it, and they will put that as the identifying works. Once a recording is registered, performers can claim them. So once the master rights holders register the works with PPL, a performer can then look for that work on the register if they're a member of PPL and claim that they claimed their performance on it. If you are a master rights holder and performer, you need to register. So so basically, if you're both, if you like, well, I am the performer and I own the recording because I made it, then you need to register both as the master rights holder and then as the performer, so you can claim both sides of the royalty. So again, really important to do both. They are both free, and both those accounts are free to join. So unlike PRS and MCPS, which are £100 each to join, although they are a one-off fee, to join, it's free to join PPL. However, you need to print, sign, and scan your form, which can be a bit of a hassle sometimes. There's and also if you also have to go through this whole US tax registration, which is a massive pain in the ass, and can be really confusing. But once you're done, you're signed up, and you can then start claiming your royalties. So blanket broadcast licenses. So PRS and PPL blanket licenses spaces allow music to be performed in public and then distributed. Distributes the revenue back to its members, songwriters, and composers. So although it's actually easier now to register, to kind of track where music's getting played, and there's definitely an argument about this at the moment. Essentially, smaller venues get covered in what's called a blanket license. Essentially, they pay for a license, they can play whatever they want within it, and they don't have to pay per track each song, because that is really difficult to administrate for a very small venue. Large venues, however, do, because they're playing to a big audience, and therefore they have to track what they're playing. They also blanket license UK broadcast. There is also a blanket license for UK broadcast channels. I'm dyslexic, by the way, so my spelling is terrible. So TV, for TV and radio. So there is a blanket license for BBC One, BBC Two, all the BBC channels, all the ITV channels, all the Channel 4 channels, and Channel 5, I think, but they might have a separate agreement. I can't remember off the top of my head. I should know this. Um, Essentially, these are what's called a blanket license, and they have agreed uh, um, a set fee for any song that is broadcast on their services, particularly on television. So, and now these fees alter depending on the time of day. So this set fee may be more at peak times. So as we've seen, but ultimately it doesn't matter which song it is or how famous the artist is. Everyone gets paid the same amount. Um, so it's what's called a blanket license, and the BBC are basically allowed to play anything and sync anything they want if it's registered with PRS and MCPS, because and they don't have to seek permission, except if it's used in a scene of violence or a scene of sex, because obviously they are sensitive issues, and there may be upset if that work has been used, if works have been used against the performer's will for sort of stuff that may be considered either upsetting or controversial, or exploitative. If you're not registered with PRS and PPL, it is unlikely that TV broadcasters will use your music. So it's really important that you sign up your works to these organizations, or they won't get they won't get used. And the reason for this is basically what they don't want is to broadcast something and then have it sat on iPlayer and then a rights holder pop up and go, actually that I'm a songwriter on that, and oh, I own that recording and you haven't paid me. They don't want any kind of blowback on any of the work that they put out. They want to make sure it's properly registered so they know that they're paying the right people. I know for a fact that the editors and directors will use a more unsuitable piece of music, or a piece of music they prefer less if it's registered, rather than a piece of music that they do really love but they don't know where the rights sit. It's really important that this work, if you want your music on television and on broadcast, it's really important they're registered, and you'll also get paid. So sync, as we mentioned, produce a visual medium, TV, games, film, pay owners of the rights in the songs for a license to reproduce the recording for performances of the songs with visual image for commercial distribution. So beyond terrestrial broadcast. So that can be for a film or for an advert. And they will pay what's called an upfront fee. So when you talk about blanket license and stuff on television, on BBC and on ITV, that you get paid what's called performance royalty, or as we've mentioned before, but there's no upfront fee for that usage. Although there is in America, which is why people want stuff in America, or that's becoming less and less, and there's a lot of changes at the moment in how Americans are using music on television. But however, on film and adverts, you will get paid an upfront fee for the use of your music. Now, this will depend on how big the product is, how big the artist is, how much they want the track. It depends on how much they are willing to pay for it, and that money's split 50-50 between the master rights holder and the publishing. So it's what we call the most favored nation clause, and that means that money's split, so everyone always receives the same amount. So it's really important that the master rights holder and the publishers agree to the same amount of money, because sometimes prices can go up and up, and before you know it, it becomes too expensive for the production company to pay for. So just to summarize, because there's been a lot, it's really important you keep a record of your repertoire. So what are your codes, etc. So either your personal songwriting code, or or the codes of your songs, making sure that you know what's in your repertoire and making sure that you're registering it regularly. If you're working with a third party, be clear about who is doing what and for how long. So if you're signed to a publisher, what are their responsibilities to you? What are they going to do for you, and for how long are they going to do it? How much are they going to make as well? Make sure you are covering collection for all possible revenue streams. So making sure that you're signed up to everything, so you're collecting all the money. Because you hear a lot of people sort of say, well, I'm not getting paid a lot by from master use, but you might be missing out on other streams as well. So by signing up to everything, you mean making sure that you're getting paid for everything. And a lot of people aren't, so they're not getting all the money that's owed to them. So these sometimes can be very small amounts for like one song, but if you've got multiple songs, multiple works, multiple master rights, and you've registered them into the proper places, and you're working them, and you're trying to get them in places, these very small amounts can actually add up to quite a lot. Can end up accumulating to a fair amount of money, and which is obviously as creative is really important, because it allows us to keep being creative. And it can be very confusing. I'm sure a lot of what I said has been confusing. It's really important you like see this as a start. Go and dig deep. Go and read. Go and look at PRS. Look at MCPS. Go and look at PPL. Look at what they do, so you understand what they are and how you can benefit from them. Make sure you're clear where recording income is being distributed. So making sure that you know like who's getting what and how much is due to you. Make sure compositions have been registered with PRS, dead important. And make sure there is an agreement or registration that covers PRS and MCPS. So making sure that either you are collecting yourself for MCPS or the publisher that is acting on behalf is collecting that on your behalf. Make sure your recordings are registered with PPL. So if you're the master rights holder, making sure you're registered with PPL. And if you're the performer, making sure that you have also joined PPL and claiming on your performances. There's a lot of information there, and I'm sure a lot of confusing thoughts. Have you got any questions? For a sec as well. Thanks for everyone who watched this, by the way.